In the Middle Ages, during the feudal system, lord of the manor was often used to denote someone who was in control of land. The lord lived a luxurious life in a stone house called a manor house. Their status was high in the feudal society, and thus peasants would only enter their property if they worked on the land or to attend the manor court, mostly held at the manor house. Lords that were appointed in the king's government were paid a good amount and were either rewarded or reprimanded based on their loyalty. Medieval lords and nobles routinely woke up at dawn to pray and take their breakfast. They would then look into the daily matter of the manor. Medieval lords were very active in political discussions and participated in the decision-making process. Then they had their lunch and often spent their free time hunting or engaging in artistic activities such as painting. Lords said their evening prayers and ate their supper in the halls of the manor or castle. Following supper, the lords would sometimes call for entertainment. When they retired for the night, the rest of the manor and the village under its wing went to bed as well. The lords that had large manors hired various people to handle the land for them. The lord with only one manor managed it himself. The serious crimes were solved by the king, but in Germany and France, great lords also had the chance to bring justice. Smaller and less violent crimes were solved by the court, administered by the lord. The lord performed as a vassal to the king. He was awarded land, and he further rented this to peasants who worked on the land. In return for the land grants, the lord provided the king with knights, and sometimes he himself fought in war. The lords and their vassals had a special ceremony called a commendation ceremony, in which there were two parts, homage and oath of fealty, both including promises made by the peasant and lord regarding each other. The lords developed the feeling of ownership over the fiefs they were given, and often resorted to force and violence regarding its protection. When nobles thought the lord was limiting their amount of power, or when the lord's own vassals found an opportunity, they rebelled and tried to attain the land. Peasant rebellions lasted from 13 to 1400s, when peasants in Europe rebelled against the worsening conditions in their villages. The two biggest rebellions were in 1358 in France and in 1381 in England. The lords had complete control over towns, but that changed when the people wanted different. Charters were made describing the duties of the townspeople and brought freedom regarding certain decisions. However, in some parts of Europe, like France, the lords did not want to back down and wanted full control. Thus, there was another problem that they faced, which was violence from towns that struggled to gain freedom from the lord. The church and God himself played a big role in everyone's life during that time. The lord kept a room in the manor house called a chapel, intended for prayer and used by all members of the castle household. In 1095, the Pope sent people on crusades to Jerusalem, not only as a pilgrimage, but to take the holy site from the Muslims. When the Pope mentioned that they would earn forgiveness from God, the lords took on these crusades as an act of service not only for the church, but also for God. After all this, when the church gradually grew politically stronger, the lord had a very important job in balancing the influence of the decisions made by the king and the church. The lord, indeed, was very important in the feudal society during the Middle Ages.